Hello and welcome. I'm Joshua Barnes. You are watching NewsX. President Donald Trump has warned the US may withhold aid from Jordan and Egypt if they do not accept Palestinians from Gaza. This comes as the Israeli military reports the death of 86-year-old Shlomo Mansour, who was killed during Hamas's October 7th attack and whose body is being held hostage in Gaza. Meanwhile, the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel is growing increasingly unstable after Hamas announced the delay of the next hostage release, citing Israel's failure to meet ceasefire obligations, including aid deliveries and the deaths of 3 Gazans last Sunday. The release has been postponed by 5 days to give mediators time to push Israel to comply. In response, the Israeli military is reinforcing areas around Gaza, heightening tensions as both sides remain firm in their positions. We are joined by several guests to discuss this ever-evolving topic coming from the Middle East. We are joined firstly by Yossi Kupawasa, who's the former head of research at the IF Defence Intelligence, joining us from Israel. We have Professor Rohan Gunaratne, who's a Middle East affairs expert, joining us from Singapore. We have Adrian Calamel, a terrorism scholar and fellow at the Arabian Peninsula Institute, joining us from New York. We have Ali M. Abashbak, who is an independent Palestinian researcher, joining us from Cairo. And finally, we are joined by Don Ritter, who is the chairman of the Remembrance Society, joining us from Washington. Don Ritter, I will come to you first because we need to look at the statements that have been made by Donald Trump around the situation within Gaza before we can react to what is happening within the last 12 to 24 hours. In terms of what we've seen from Donald Trump and his strong stance saying that his plan to take over Gaza is not going away and that he's relying on countries like Jordan to cooperate. How do you think that meeting between Donald Trump and Jordan will happen, and how do you think it will go today?
Well, I think it's going to go very well. I think the whole idea is you can take Trump seriously, but probably not literally. And I know he has in the king a great ally and a friend. So I assume that they'll have a good meeting. Let me just comment on this hostage delay. One does not know exactly how many hostages are still there, how many are alive, how many are wasted, a la concentration camp body types. So we're not sure what the hang up is all about. But I'll say this, the American people are really fed up with this drips and drabs of hostage release with Hamas mega spectacles with guns and black masks and large crowds. I think the president is also very disconcerted by all of that, and I think they're kind of, along probably with Netanyahu, fed up with the way this agreement is going, especially the spectacle made by Hamas every time they release hostages with placards and with guns and large crowds, and it's just ugly. And I think both Trump and Netanyahu are fed up with it.
Yossi Kupawasa, I would like to come to you for this next question. Backing up what Donald Trump has said, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has also been strong in his words, saying specifically that relentless action will play out if the hostages are not returned as planned. What do you think that will look like?
Well, I think that we are committed to the agreement we made with Hamas, and we expect Hamas to be committed to the agreement as well, and we expect Hamas to release the hostages. I fully agree with Don about the unacceptability of what's going on with the way they release the hostages. This cannot go on like that. But we have committed ourselves to this agreement that is problematic right from the beginning, and we expect Hamas to do it. If Hamas does not play according to the commitments, then I guess the fighting will resume, and we shall have to remove Hamas from power in Gaza by force.
Ali, I would like to come to you because, of course, what we have heard from Hamas is that Israel haven't been holding their end of the ceasefire deal. In terms of the Palestinians and people living within Palestine, there must be a fear that all-out war is going to break out.
Well, thank you for having me. I want to just only confirm that the situation in Gaza are extremely fragile about the ceasefire, and everyone's they are ready for the war again. Since the day one of Israel and Hamas reached to the agreement of the ceasefire, that Benjamin Netanyahu and his parliament colleagues like Benafir and like Smotrich, who they said this ceasefire, it will not end the war. It's just only, it's a part of the war. It's just to release as much as of the hostages. Obviously, this kind of statement, and also the Benafir, he resigned from the government for reaching to the agreement with Hamas. So from the day one, the Israeli side doesn't agree the ceasefire, and the day one they are they are preparing to go back for the war. Well, the Palestinian also, and also there is a mutual accusation between Hamas and Israel for the violation of the agreement. Well, Israel said Hamas doesn't, like last week, Benjamin Netanyahu, he said Hamas violated the agreement without giving any details, as well as Hamas leadership. They said Israel violated the agreement by killing tens of Palestinians from Gaza after the ceasefire in Rafah and Zaytun in Gaza, and also in the north in Gaza, Beit Hanun. As well as also Hamas confirmed that according to agreement that Israel army will allow for 12,000 of vehicle of aids to enter Gaza, while just only 8,500 vehicle enter Gaza. So there is a mutual accusation between Hamas and Israel, which make the situation more tough, which make the situation are ready to return to the war, which the people in Gaza doesn't hope that, especially people. I called many Palestinians from Gaza, from northern Gaza, who their home completely destroyed. They confirmed that they establish their homes, they start restructuring their home, despite Donald Trump shook his statement that about displace the Palestinian to other land, and he is going to impose sanction against Egypt or Jordan if they will not receive the refugee from Gaza. This idea, as I said, it's unrealistic. There is ethnic cleaner to the Palestinian, and it will not end the conflict between Israel and Palestine. As well as Egypt, they said about the Camp David agreement, which they reached after the war in 1973. It's going to be end with Israel if Donald Trump is going to apply his strategy or his idea to displace the Palestinians to other plan.
Yes, and I'd like to pick up on that. Professor Gunaratne, of course, Donald Trump has made clear his wants and desires for Gaza, the Riviera of the Middle East. Does a war-torn Gaza help him in achieving those plans?
Trump is very keen not to go back to war. But Trump is also very determined that Hamas frees the hostages. So for Trump, what is important is to threaten that Hamas release the hostages. And if Hamas is not going to do that, it is very likely that he will agree to Netanyahu's proposal to re-intervene in Gaza militarily and start to disseminate Hamas organization. The Israel strategic calculus is to seek the release of the hostages. But if Hamas is going to create issues and problems and challenges, then of course it is very likely that Israel will use force. Israel has no hesitation to do so, although its key objective is to get the hostages out.
Adrian Calamel, thank you very much for waiting while our other guests spoke there. I'd like to really focus on what Trump has said, and and saying that Israel should withdraw from the ceasefire deal and let all hell break loose. Do you think this is conducive to any peace moving forward? And what do you think Trump's aim is, using words like hell when describing an area and two countries which have been warring, as we know, for well over a year?
Great question, Joshua. First of all, I would say that the old phrase, war is hell. It is hell. I think that the hell was introduced on October 7th by Hamas, and now we're seeing the results of a war. As far as Trump's statement, he was making these type of statements before he was even inaugurated. My belief is that he probably should have said, there's going to be hell to pay. Hamas has American hostages. It is the commander-in-chief's responsibility to make every effort to get those individuals back. And we did not see that from the Biden administration. And we're seeing not only the drips and drabs of the hostages coming out, but we're also seeing that the information coming about the Biden administration continuously getting in the way of the Israeli efforts to move around Gaza, make sure Hamas is defeated. The Biden administration continuously got in the way of this. And we're hearing this from individuals such as Herzog, who is no friend of Bibi Netanyahu. So as far as this statement, there needs to be an ultimatum to Hamas. The beginning of this war, there are two objectives that should have been seen right from the very beginning and reiterated throughout: the return of all the hostages, and that Hamas is not allowed to ever have control and or launch another assault from Gaza.
Yossi,
2005.
Sorry to interrupt there. Please carry on, Adrian.
I mean, 2005. You have the Land for Peace deal, and Hamas's charter says it's all about the destruction of Israel. So a ceasefire is, for Hamas, it's to regroup, it's to stall. I mean, they're going to cast blame in the world to say that Netanyahu is holding these type of things up. But let's look at this honestly. Who kidnapped hundreds of hostages, executed numbers of them, and probably are holding on to what I had estimated? Don made a very good point here, that there's a hostages dilemma. At what point are they still leveraged, and at what point do they outlive their usefulness and they're being executed along the way? How many are still alive? And we see the nature and the physical nature of these individuals as they're getting released. It's going from healthy to emaciated individuals. And I think this is Hamas dragging their feet, just as they always do with these type of deals.
Yes, and understanding the feeling from within Israel, Yossi Kapawasa, we know that 17 Israeli hostages were due to be released in this first phase of the ceasefire deal. For the families and the friends of those that are still being held by Hamas, that uncertainty, and for the rest of Israel, who, of course, there have been protests across Tel Aviv and in other parts of the country calling for these hostages to be returned as soon as possible. The country must be almost in mourning still over the 17 bodies, dead or alive, that remain in Hamas control, who were due to be released.
Well, of course, in Israel, everybody wants to see all the hostages released as soon as possible. The deal is a problematic deal because, as stated here again and again, they come out in installments, and this allows Hamas to play with Israeli emotions and cause more pressure over the government in order to show even a weaker position when we come to discuss the fate of the hostages that are not included in the first stage of the deal. And what President Trump offers is a totally different approach that was promoted by some of the families of the hostages, that let's demand that all hostages will be released in one release move, and put an end to this suffering. That's the idea that Trump proposes. There is the cabinet, the security cabinet of Israel was sitting on the issue for 4.5 hours now, and just finished. I don't know what the results were, but some of the ministers were calling for resuming the war. Some of them are more inclined to support the continuation of the deal, and it's a very heated issue here in Israel about what to do about it. Everybody understands the families, of course, they have direct interest, but all of Israel is eager to see those hostages back home, and the suffering that they are going through is unbelievable, and we have to see them back home. The solidarity that keeps everybody together here is very strong, and everybody feels about the hostages and wants to see them home. But at the same time, as was mentioned here, we also want to make sure that Gaza is not going to be ruled by Hamas and will not serve as a launching pad for more attacks like the 7th of October in the future.
Yes.
This also has to be part of our goal.
Yes, Don Ritter, I want to look at Trump's comment relating to a deadline of Saturday, 12 o'clock for the remaining hostages to be returned. What do you think Trump would do if that isn't the case? And do you think that that is a direct threat to Hamas, that war will return if they aren't returned by his deadline?
Yeah, I think it shows that Trump is fed up with the stalling tactics and this drips and drabs of hostages being let out. And it's very ugly. It's very ugly to the American people. And what's more, the presentation of the hostages and the Hamas engagement shows that Hamas in no way is going to end this thing peacefully and sort of go into exile, and that this war is going to continue. So I think the feeling of the Trump administration is the hostage deal has failed, and it's not working. And you have this balance between you want to save the hostages, but you also don't want a regrouping of Hamas in a new war where Hamas has strengthened itself and shows absolutely no feelings of remorse or concern over human life. The attack on October 7th is Hamas's attack, and they are responsible for this war, and they are responsible for the death of the Palestinian civilians. Even as Israel, as experts have shown, have stated that the deaths of civilians to military casualties is the lowest ever. But the fact is, this isn't working. It's not working. And what Trump does is, I think, the deal goes out the window and some major impact happens. Now, I'm not sure that Iran could be a target of something happening on Saturday. So we'll see.
We will absolutely see when we get to that point if the hostages haven't been released. Ali, of course, part of the hostage exchange. It's not just the hostage deal. There are, of course, hundreds of Palestinian prisoners who are returning to Gaza and to the West Bank. So what is the feeling and what's the understanding from people within Palestine over the fact that this pause in the deal will also see many of those who were due to be released staying in Israeli prisons? And could that be potentially a positive for Israel? Of course, we know that they've spoken about the fact that lots of the people who are in prison are potentially affiliated with Hamas, and the impact that could have with them returning on any rise of Hamas past this ceasefire deal.
Well, see, I want just to only mention that the aim of the war is not to release the hostages, because during 15 months of the war, how many hostages Israel released by the arm and by the war, by the using the weapon? Just only 3. So Netanyahu is trying to manipulate.
No, we released
Netanyahu
close to 200. We released close to 200. There were 200.
Hold on, guys. Let's let Ali finish what he's saying, and then we can come back. Ali, if you can just continue, and then we will jump back in, and we can challenge anything that Ali said.
Netanyahu is trying to use the war to delaying his long-running case about corruption in the Israeli code. And that's what happened the last week when they asked him to go to the court. He got angry. He said, I'm at war and I can't go, and how I will do what. So, and also when they asked for his statement in the court, he got also angry about his running the war against the terrorists, according to him, terrorists in Gaza. So how they ask him to go to the court. So what is happening on the ground? Obviously, as I said in the beginning, the ceasefire, it's a fragile. There is no notion to continue the ceasefire. And what is happening between the meeting between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump? Donald Trump, he gave him the green light to return to the war. So obviously about Palestinian, what's happening, that to delay the releasing the hostages, and which means there is no exchange for the prisoner in between Palestinian and Israel. It's unfortunate, and going back to the war, it's unfortunate, since the negotiation is the main solution to find out any kind of not only to release the hostages, only to find some solution for the Palestinian and Israelis conflict. Framing Hamas as the only part to violate the ceasefire, it's not true. Both of sides, they have a violation in the ceasefire. And also showing the people or the international community that Palestinian doesn't deserve the life, like displace them and kill them as much. More than 48,000 people, they got killed. They are civilian. They are not a military.
They're not. They're not.
So
half of them are terrorists.
This is a new
the amount of mistakes that my friend makes in
they
one
they are human. They deserve
a couple of sentences is beyond belief.
Listen, don't say something. It's not good. They are human like you.
Yeah, they're human, but half of them are terrorists. They are human. Human terrorists. That's what they are.
What a human terrorist. What do you mean by human terrorists? Everyone is
Hamas,
Hamas and
members
Gaza.
of Hamas terror groups and the Islamic Jihad terror group.
Ali, sorry to interrupt. Let's hear what Yossi has to say, and then I can come back to you for a response, so there's not talking over each other, because it's difficult for the audience to understand. Yossi, can I get your response as to what Ali says, and then we can go back to him?
I'm just saying that the numbers of casualties in Gaza include the terrorists that were killed over there. About 20,000 terrorists, and nobody knows what the exact number of civilians, but they were used as human shields most of the time. And the rate of between terrorists and those who were serving as human shields is unbelievably low in warfare. And we have to remember that. And also the number of hostages that we have released since the beginning of the war is much more than 3. We released 180 hostages from Hamas captivity, and we still have 79, unfortunately, that are waiting. 35 of them are dead.
Ali, I'd like to come back to you to get a response to what Yossi has said there in terms of the number of terrorists within Gaza and Palestinian terrorists. Do you agree with that number, and do you think that potentially there's a situation where everybody's being tarnished with the same brush, or is it a case that the number of terrorists within Gaza and Palestinian terrorists is alarmingly high?
Unfortunately, manipulating the international community is not the right way, because of using the term like using the human or the civilian as a human shield. This is not acceptable, because of we have seen the footage and we have seen the picture that Israelis troops, they use the people from Gaza around the Israelis tank to give them as a shelter, to give them as protective from the Palestinians military group to not attack the Israelis tank. And we have seen that Israel attacked the civilians places, like a hospital, like a public place, like a universities, like a school, like everyone. So this generalized.
All these facilities were used by the terror group Hamas.
Yossi, I apologize to interrupt. I'll give you your chance to respond. I'll give you your chance to respond.
This is not correct. I'm from Gaza.
This is correct. This is 100% correct.
I'm from Gaza. I'm not protecting Hamas. My ideology is against Hamas, so I'm not defending
I'm
Hamas
not
here.
saying that you're protecting Hamas, you're just making
But
mistakes.
this is not giving you justified to attack the people and the civilian by the accusation that there is some. And also, we have seen that Israeli troop enter Al-Shifa hospital. We couldn't find one single
Shifa
evidence
hospital
about.
was used by the terrorists in order to
This is not true. This is not true.
hide away from Israel.
Guys, we're going to interject
You
because
can't manipulate the audience.
sorry to interrupt both of you. In order for the debate to continue, we need to have one person speaking clearly so our audience can get through. But Adrian Calamel, I'm going to come to you because I want to look at the words that Hamas have used in response to the threats that have been made by Donald Trump and, of course, the promises that Israel have made as well. Hamas have said the language of threats has no value. What do you think this implies about Hamas and their mentality looking at the breakdown potentially of this ceasefire deal?
Well, it's simple. They glorify death. They look at it as an avenue to the future. They're, martyrdom. They've glorified it. It's a death cult. They can be as bombastic as they want, but they are on the ropes. There are still individuals that the Israelis had thought were dead commanders, but we know that they're still out there. If Hamas wants to play this game, then it's complete annihilation. And Hezbollah isn't coming to the rescue. The Islamic Republic is not coming to the rescue. They are isolated. The one group that they're looking to is probably Turkey. They're looking to HTS. They're looking to the Sunni jihadists now, even though they get significant backing and probably got the green light. No, did get the green light from the Islamic Republic of Iran to carry out this, and the rest of it has been manipulated by Qatar, the messaging, the talking points, civilian versus military males. We're talking 2-to-1 ratio, maybe 1-to-1 ratio. When you look at our campaign against ISIS, and Hamas should be viewed as the same way, that was 60-to-1 on the, you're talking combat to civilian ratio on the final assault on Mosul. And this is documented. It's been done in front of the Senate. We can look at the facts, or we can just talk about, aid not getting in, and let's talk about the aid that constantly gets hijacked with guys sitting on the top with AK-47s. Yeah, there's been violations, but there's been hostage releases, and when it's ground to a halt, the only time the Israelis have been able to get a hostage out is through going in and causing evacuations. And then there's an outcry, pulling people out, such as the Israeli Chinese national Noah Argami, pulling her out and then pulling 2 other people out. They engaged gunfire in one of those situations, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, a bunch of civilians got killed during a rescue mission to get these individuals out. We have to remember there was also another hostage exchange very early on. Israelis did get out, but you look at the ratio, 50-to-1, 60-to-1, terrorists coming out of prisons, individuals that blew up buses, did other things, for individuals who were just at a concert and got taken over and kept as sex slaves, human shields, which was facilitated by groups like UNRWA. The whole thing is rotten to the core. It's not hyperbole. It's look at the evidence. It's all there. It's all there. And it will become more apparent once the veil gets lifted back on what happened in Gaza, what Hamas has controlled, how much they control, their influence in the UN organization, UNRWA, and how they have created an incubator over 2 decades of just pure hatred, indoctrinating generations upon generations.
Professor Gunaratne, I'm going to come to you to close this discussion, and I want to take it away from one specific side in this conflict. There are hostages dead and alive. There are potentially millions of people not affiliated with Hamas who have been displaced, and further violence could lead to more displacement or moving out of the country. Ultimately, we're looking at a conflict which is affecting both sides. And how do you think that a resolution can be found, considering how far we've gone after the ceasefire towards a return to combat?
Today, President Trump will meet King Abdullah of Jordan. They have a very good relationship. In the coming weeks and coming months, he will meet with Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, and the President of Egypt. he will develop a very comprehensive understanding of the complexity of the Middle East, not only Trump, but Trump's entire team. Certainly, there is consensus that Hamas cannot govern Gaza anymore. Either Hamas has to surrender or Hamas will be eliminated. There is also consensus that Iran cannot build a functional nuclear weapon. So I personally believe that Palestinian interests to create a two-state solution will be preserved, although not in the immediate term, but certainly there will be no space, no room, no opportunity for Hamas to exist in Gaza. I want to conclude by saying that Hamas does not regret that it staged the October 7th attack, and I think it is imperative for the international community to support the dismantling of Hamas, because if we permit groups like this to survive and sustain, it will send a very bad message that a terrorist group can come, kill people, maim people, injure people, rape people, and burn people. So I personally believe that the Americans and the Europeans and many Arab countries, although they have not voiced their opinion openly, will want Hamas to be dismantled. This is the direction in which both the Arab and the Muslim governments, the leaders, may not be the Arab or the Muslim street, they are moving. And I think it is a good thing, because we need to stabilize the Middle East. The Middle East cannot exist in this state of continuous war, because the Middle East is the heartland of the world, and we need to ensure that there is an end to this conflict. But certainly Palestinian rights should be preserved. I think Trump's proposal to move the Palestinians out of Gaza, I think, will not be supported widely. But Trump's proposal to have the Abraham Accords going certainly will be supported. Iran will be marginalized. This is the direction that the Middle East is heading.
Professor Gunaratne, Yossi, Adrian, Ali and also Don, thank you very much for that extremely insightful discussion. We of course will continue to bring you all of the updates from the Middle East as they happen, and also from across the world.